With the naked eye, you cannot tell the difference. They're chemically, physically, optically identical.
What about with one of those loops that they wear?
Under a 30X, under a 10X, you could not tell the difference. The only way you could is there's specific testing equipment. So either you send it to the GIA, IGI, or in a jewelry store, they do have testing equipment that can tell the difference. But very small nuances. So for example, one is nitrogen-free, which is the lab-grown, and the other has some trace elements of nitrogen. But to the naked eye, you cannot tell the difference.
Can we talk about the quality scale, though, and if it exists? Because this is mean, but there's Facebook groups that are dedicated to calling out, like, poorly made lab-grown diamonds. Moissanite, for example. I feel like you can tell with certain diamonds.
Yeah, so moissanite is not a diamond, and you can certainly tell with the trained eye. But with the lab-grown diamonds, they're chemically, physically, optically identical, so there's actually no fundamental difference. And they're cut and polished by hand the same way a natural diamond is, so they look identical.
So what are you selling? Are you selling the real deal? Are you selling lab-grown? Do you have a mix?
We're selling both. We launched lab-grown 15 months ago. So on the same product page, we'll offer the same design in both lab-grown and natural.
What's the price difference, say, of a 2-carat,
10X. For the actual diamond part of it, 10X. Yeah, so a 3-carat engagement ring, for example, would be $30,000 if it's natural. It'd be $3,000 if it's lab.
That's fascinating. Do you see those prices converging, though? Because I think about other luxury items, and I hear what you're saying, the research out there that it's much cheaper to produce these lab-grown diamonds. But you think about, luxury handbags, for example. They don't have that high markup because they were expensive to make necessarily. It's just because people want it, and there's a ton of demand, and there's this mystique about it. So do you see that happening with lab-grown diamonds as well?
I think on the lab-grown side, the prices have stabilized. So 2018, they were roughly 15% cheaper than the natural equivalent. Now they're 90% cheaper. They're not going to get cheaper from here, most likely. Diamond prices, however, natural diamond prices have been coming down dramatically.
Yeah.
So versus peak, they're down 50%. In the last 12 months, they're down 23%. Pretty amazing. And as you mentioned at the beginning, De Beers dropping prices by 10%. They're still high. So a site holder, which is a direct customer of De Beers, who's buying that parcel of rough, is still losing money. So there needs to be another 15 to 20% correction before the market starts stabilizing. So we're going to continue to see that.
I mean, I imagine the only reason you'd want a real diamond versus a lab-grown diamond is for the value of it. Since you can't see the difference, you can't tell, you won't know, right?
Yeah.
I guess the only reason that you would want a real diamond is to hold the value, but as it drops, that reason becomes
moot. Yeah. I mean, historically, there's 2 reasons people bought natural diamonds. One is this inflation hedge because it starts appreciating over time. And 2, there's financial flex. So if you're wearing a 2-carat or 3-carat ring, it's showing, it's telling you something about yourself. With lab-grown being 90% cheaper, the financial flex goes away. With diamonds going down in price, the investment thesis goes away.
And there's not a market, as with gold and silver or copper, right? These are traded and we have spot prices in different markets. You don't have the same thing with diamonds.
You can easily resell it, but not nearly as easily as gold. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
I do want to move on from diamonds because I'm looking through your notes. You also talk about colored gemstone engagement rings, which, in the nasty Facebook groups I'm a part of, they get a lot of heat as well.
But they don't like emeralds or sapphires?
No.
They don't like rubies?
No.
In engagement rings?
No.
What Facebook group is this?
I don't know. It's this nasty group I joined like 3 years ago. In any case, not that is real data here, but you are seeing more engagement with colored gemstones. I feel like they are becoming more popular. What are you seeing trend-wise there?
Yeah, they're growing very quickly. So historically, let's say 10 years ago, they were 5% of the engagement ring market. They're already crossing 15% towards 30%. So we ran a nationwide survey 6 months ago, and 30% of Gen Z soon-to-be brides would prefer a colored gemstone. So we're seeing that dramatic shift.
I feel old.
So
I can't relate to
They're
it.
not in your Facebook group.
No,
you might need to look at Snap or
TikTok. They don't even
TikTok.
have Facebook accounts, probably.
I wonder. I don't want to move too far away from the diamond comparison because I find it so fascinating. And now that you've been selling lab-grown diamonds for 15 months, what's the mix look like for you, and what's the trajectory?
It's been tremendous. So on the diamond side, the same SKU is now 60% lab, 40% natural, where it used to be 100% 16 months ago. So the majority are choosing lab. On the color side, it's roughly 2/3 natural, 1/3 lab, but even that's growing very quickly as well.
So as Katie and her compatriots die out or get married, the younger generation is going to be choosing
lab grown. Yeah. So it's interesting. So
the more sustainable option, I was going to say.
Is more sustainable and much cheaper. So affordability is obviously very big, but in the survey that we ran, the #1 criteria for women was affordability. So now, under $5,000, you can get a 2 to 3 carat diamond engagement ring. That used to be the dream for decades, and that used to be $30,000, so you out of reach.
Yeah.
Now a lot of people can afford that.
I also am always curious, I mean, thinking about the jewelry business, specifically the diamond business, you're pretty closely tied to engagements. And I don't know if there's any cyclicality or seasonality there, but I mean, how do you think about that from a business approach, branching out of just, engagement rings?
So 37% of the engagement rings sold during the year are sold between November and February. So this is certainly...
There is a cyclicality.
There is.
That's interesting.
So Valentine's Day is in that, Christmas Eve is in that. But I think the larger opportunity that the lab presents is that there's 62 million married couples in the U.S. There's 2.5 million engagements that happen every year. So the market for people that are already married that can now afford a lab-grown ring that is 2 to 3 carats, which is what they've always wanted but couldn't afford, is 25x the regular engagement ring market. And I think that's the market that will expand. So, broadly speaking, the overall jewelry industry worldwide is roughly $370 billion. I think it gets to $1 trillion in a decade, which is 10% per year growth. Everybody else is predicting 4%. And it's because people can now start affording what they haven't been able to purchase in the past.